classrooms. And you know what? Our kids deserve so much better than this. And you know what, Madam Speaker, they know it. We've seen already the leadership that these kids are showing. We had 100,000 kids who walked out of school. They walked out of school because they wanted to say, students say no. They know what's up. They know that this is their education and that they have to fight for it. It's just such a shame that young people have to fight for their education. It really shouldn't be the case. They should have a government that, in fact, assures them that their education is a #1 priority. It's not something that they can balance the budget on the backs of your education. You know, in my riding of Dundas, I had hundreds of kids came to my constituency office. And since then, they've been coming to my constituency office one at a time to talk about their concerns and talk about their fears for their education. And, you know, I would just say that what I have learned is that on May 8th, there's going to be another province-wide student sit-in. And again, part of the Students Say No movement. You know, my office in Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas will be open to these students. Because you know what? I want to hear, we want to hear directly from students what it is that they are fearing. You know, this government really has got devolved to the point where all they can do is hurl insults and talk about fear-mongering, but the government doesn't want to hear what the students of Ontario are really fearing, because they have real fears. They fear these crowded class sizes, how that's going to impact their education. They don't want to lose teachers that they've got to know, teachers that they trust. They don't want to see that happen. You know what? They are fearful about their ability to even graduate if, in fact, it's mandatory that they take 4 online classes and they can't do that. You know, now we have currently students that are being herded into auditoriums and gyms because they have to re-choose programs that courses that they've already picked. So you know what? They're fearful that they are not going to be able to get the courses that they need to graduate so that they can go on to post-secondary if that is their choice. You know, we just heard this morning, which was a shocking statistic from the York Region Board, that 45% of students won't have a full course load that will allow them to graduate because of the lack of course options. This is a shameful state of affairs in the province of Ontario. And you know what? Our students are showing such leadership, and I have to say that I'm endlessly proud of the way that they are standing up to this government. And you know, when I went to visit a school, Westdale High School, in my riding, the students were very clear that they knew why they walked out. And they were actually quite insulted that the Premier had said that they were being manipulated by their teachers or that they were being manipulated by the unions. And they had a clear message for the Premier, and that was that they wanted to say, don't underestimate us and don't undermine our education, because we are not going to, because they are here to say that they are going to continue to stand up to fight for their education. You know, we talked a lot about post-secondary cuts. You know, this is a government that talks about the future and talking about that we want to prepare our students for the future, and then they make cuts to post-secondary education that makes it even more difficult for kids of Ontario to access post-secondary education. You know, the government clearly, as we know, scrapped the free tuition program, which helped young students access post-secondary. They're getting rid of the Student Choice Initiative, which will make it mandatory for institutions to provide an online opt-out for essential programs. You know, they got rid of the 6-month interest grace period for student loans. And you know, that's when students graduate and they had 6 months of a grace period to not accrue interest on their loan. When you graduate from a program, you don't have a job on the day you graduate. In fact, what you are doing as a new graduate is trying to find a job in your field of study. But this government is not going to give you any kind of accommodation while you try to find that job. They're going to ding you on your interest rate from the day you graduate. And really, why? Why are we even? Why is this government even earning interest on the backs of students' loans? It makes absolutely no sense to me. And clearly, with this budget, this is only going to get worse for the students of Ontario. Let's move on from that. We have in Hamilton, we have a lot of post-secondary institutions. Really proud of that. We have McMaster University, we have Mohawk College, we have Redeemer College. So there's a lot of investment in post-secondary education, and in fact, in Hamilton, we recognize that and we value that. We value the importance it plays for our young people, but also for our economic development. And so these cuts to education, the threat that the government has around the strategic mandate agreements, these are not seen as positive at all in Hamilton or in any of the educational institutions in Hamilton. These are things that they're just going to have to absorb and manage, and it's not making education better for students. In fact, if we look at the strategic mandate specifically, Stephanie Bertola, who is Vice President of Education for McMaster Student Union, has this to say, which is students are concerned about how the proposed funding metrics in the upcoming strategic mandate agreements will be measured and the effect that they will have on universities. Universities will have little time to adapt, which may result in significant funding decreases that will inevitably have a negative impact on student learning experiences. Students want a high-quality education and believe that the provincial government should provide adequate funding to Ontario universities. So, again, a theme here, that students and educators, both whether it's public school or post-secondary, are saying these changes are making education worse for the people of Ontario, for students of Ontario. Again, so much is missing from this budget. We have no mention of the non-repayable grants for students, particularly grants for Indigenous students, for Black students, students with disabilities, and other equity-seeking groups. No mention of grants, only mention of more of loans. There's again, not surprisingly, no mention of Franco-Ontarian school, of the Franco-Ontarians who were looking for a university. No mention at all. In fact, there's no mention at all in the budget. Once again, we see that this is a government that seems to have just turned their back on Franco-Ontarians. And again, Franco-Ontarians, university students, students of all stripes deserve so much better than a government that is saying quite clearly they don't value education. It doesn't seem to be a priority for them. But, you can get alcohol at 9 o'clock in the morning in the province of Ontario. That seems to be something that's important to this government.
I wonder if you could